This is the ITV News at 5:30 with Sascha Williams.
It's emerged that Millie's voicemail messages could have been deleted without any hacking. Also on the programme, Cameron's EU treaty veto. Could it break up the coalition with Clegg? And tributes to Johnny Wilkinson as he ends his international rugby career. Good morning and welcome to the programme. There have been new developments over claims that journalists from the News of the World hacked into Millie Dowler's phone. The allegation about the murdered teenager led to the paper's closure. But now detectives think it's unlikely the reporters deleted voicemail messages after listening to them. The Leveson inquiry into press standards heard the messages could have been wiped automatically after 72 hours. The Guardian newspaper, which first carried the Dowler hacking report, is defending its coverage. From the inquiry, Sejal Karia reports. Senior Liberal Democrats are insisting their coalition with the Conservatives will survive yesterday's deep public split over Europe. When David Cameron reported back to MPs on why he vetoed a new EU treaty, his deputy Nick Clegg should have been by his side. But the Lib Dem leader chose to stay away, claiming his presence would have been a distraction. Our political editor Tom Bradby has more. So can the two coalition parties go on working together after this bitter dispute on Europe? Tom sent this assessment from Westminster about how much trust now remains between the partners in government. The prosecution is expected to complete its case today at the Old Bailey trial of two men accused of murdering teenager Stephen Lawrence in southeast London in 1993. Gary Dobson and David Norris both deny the charges against them, which are based on the finding of blood and other substances on items of clothing. High winds have been buffeting parts of Britain overnight, with gusts of up to 70 miles per hour recorded in Devon. The Scottish Government says that snow and strong winds could leave commuters facing rush hour disruption this morning. The Met Office has severe weather warnings of snow in place in much of Scotland. Well, time for a look at the morning's papers now. And the fallout from that EU veto in Brussels last week is making many of the front pages. The Independent calls it Clegg's Day of Rage. It pictures the Deputy Prime Minister as he left the Houses of Parliament yesterday and says the split at the top of the coalition has deepened. Not so much rage on the front page of the Mail, but more of a big sulk. That's how the paper is describing Clegg's reaction to that veto. The Express leads on a different aspect of the Euro row. It says that a senior Brussels bureaucrat has promised a new deluge of damaging red tape on UK businesses. That's in revenge for Mr Cameron's veto. The Guardian also highlights the division between Nick Clegg and David Cameron. The picture shows that missing great stag of Exmoor and asks whether its head is now on the wall of a Devon hotel. But there's also an interesting mention of that new inquiry into the Millie Dowler phone hacking case. It was The Guardian that first reported the claims of the News of the World, saying that the journalists there deleted voicemails on Millie Dowler's phone. Today, the paper admits it now considered that is unlikely. Mary Portas making the front page of The Telegraph. The self-styled Queen of Shops, who's a columnist with the paper, writes that Britain's high streets have reached crisis point after decades of neglect and mismanagement, and it will disappear without urgent regeneration. The Times claims that lives are at risk as hospitals run into a cash crisis, saying standards are unacceptable in too many cases. Well, abroad now, and how far the police can go in trying to catch illegal immigrants is now an issue in America's election campaign. But the candidates must wait to see what the Supreme Court decides about it. The judges in Washington have been asked to rule on the tough immigration laws in the border state of Arizona, where police mount random stop and search operations to catch illegal migrants from Mexico. Here's NBC's Justice correspondent Pete Williams. Now, studying a manuscript that once changed the course of science will no longer be limited to a handful of university researchers. Soon, anyone will be able to study Sir Isaac Newton's handwritten calculations on the laws of gravity and motion. Daisy McAndrew went to Cambridge to see how modern technology is opening up 17th century science. Well, sport now, and in last night's football, Chelsea beat league leaders Manchester City 2-1 at Stamford Bridge. City's first loss of the season puts Chelsea up to third in the Premier League. That's still 7 points behind their opponents. Well, staying with football, and England manager Fabio Capello has told ITV News he'll do things differently at next summer's Euro 2012 Championship and may bring in younger players. He spoke to our sports editor Steve Scott during a visit to London's Great Ormond Street Hospital for Sick Children. England's most celebrated rugby player, Jonny Wilkinson, is retiring from the international game at the age of 32. He told his legion of fans on his website, "You'll never truly understand the effect you've had." Among his many achievements, his record-breaking 36 drop goals. Will Mott looks at the highlights of his career. That story is making some of the sports pages of the papers this morning. The Guardian's headline, "Wilkinson ends his glittering career as England's golden boy." But further down the page, it's a different golden boy in the picture, Frank Lampard there, celebrating, as we've just heard, after scoring from the penalty spot to give Chelsea a victory over Man City last night. And it's a similar picture on the back of the Times. Now, did you miss me? That's the headline on the back of the Mirror. The paper calls Lampard a super sub and a comeback king. And again in the Daily Mail, it's Franks a lot, the headline there. The paper pictures both the ups and the downs of the match, though, as well as Drogba hailing Lampard. It carries a picture of that controversial decision when Silva was tripped up in front of the referee. Different controversy in the back of the Express. The headline is about an alleged bust-up in the tunnel after last night's match. The paper says Chelsea players, including Ashley Cole, were in high spirits and apparently taunted their rivals, though Mancini explained they were lively because they beat a top team. That fracas also making the back page of the Star. But in the Independent, it says that Mancini is playing the incident down, and they run a picture of Drogba celebrating with Lampard after he smashed in that winner. That's your back pages for you this morning. This is the ITV News at 5:30. Our top story this morning. Now, finally, the TV naturalist Sir David Attenborough has had some explaining to do. And this time, it wasn't about unusual forms of wildlife. He had to say why his Frozen Planet programme about Arctic polar bears used pictures filmed in a Dutch zoo with artificial snow. Sir David has denied misleading viewers, saying the newborn cubs could not have been filmed in the wild without risk. Emily Morgan reports. And that is the way the news is looking this morning. Daybreak is next here on ITV1. We're back at the same time tomorrow. I do hope you can join us for that. Meanwhile, from all of us here on the early team, it's goodbye and thank you for watching. Have a good morning.